Rob Dauster here. I got Jeff Goodman with me.
Hell no.
John Fink.
Are we still live?
Field of 68 till I die.
I'm sorry, man. I blacked out.
Randolph Children.
DJ Khaled, you not a big DJ Khaled guy?
Hands grown up and in.
Goodman needs to be fired all the time.
Josh Pastner.
You're going to beat people straight up.
You know the deal.
They have no swag. They have no nothing.
Terrell McNeil.
From the bluest of the blue bloods to the smallest of the mid-majors.
This is Field of 68 After Dark.
Hello and welcome to the Thursday evening edition of the Field of 68 After Dark. My name is Rob Dauster. I have Jeff Goodman with me. We are live on the Stadium app and we are streaming over on our YouTube channel. Make sure you jump in the chat, fire away, ask us some questions. We will be live at 9 p.m. every Tuesday and every Thursday through the 2024 NBA draft. We have some draft content that's going to be coming up as well. We're going to be joined later on by Mark Pope. We're going to play a segment of his interview with Jeff from, I think it was it Wednesday afternoon? The days are just running together, Goodman. I can never keep track what day it is, what time it is, what month it is, what era it is. But we're going to be joined by Mark Pope in a little bit. That's part of our Off the Carousel series. If you go and check out the Field of 68 After Dark podcast feeds on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify, or if you check our YouTube channel and our Twitter feed, you can see our Off the Carousel series. We're going to try to get with every single one of the new Division I head coaching hires from this latest round of the coaching carousel. Talk to them about their new jobs, how they ended up there, and how much NIL they were able to generate by signing their new contract. So we're going to get to that. It's a fun interview. Any interview that Mark Pope does is always a fun interview. We have some an interesting conversation in the second segment we're going to get to here. It's a little game of would you rather. Whose roster would you rather have, Indiana or Purdue, UConn or Kansas, Kentucky or Arkansas? And I have a feeling that me and Jeff are going to disagree on a couple of these. And I also want to talk a little bit about updated top 10s and where we have certain teams, because Kansas, the team that so many people said won the portal season, Jeff, because they went out and they landed 4 of the best transfers in the transfer portal, lost one of them on Wednesday afternoon. Riley Kugel has reopened his recruitment. This doesn't necessarily come as a surprise, because if you listen to any of the interviews that Bill Self did, he kind of hinted at the fact that he wasn't sure if Riley Kugel was going to make it to campus. Turns out he's not going to be there. Part of the reason he's not going to be there, after he committed, Kansas went out and added Zeke Mayo, AJ Storr, and Rylan Griffin. So all of a sudden he went from the priority recruit to maybe like the 8th guy off the bench if he had stayed there. So what do you make of Riley Kugel reopening his commitment, his recruitment, and what does this mean for Kansas big picture?
Yeah, I don't think Bill Self lost any sleep over Riley leaving. I'll say that much. I don't think it impacted them whatsoever.
You couldn't just be nice, man.
I'm just going to be honest. Like, look at their top 7 or 8 and tell me how Riley was going to get more than 12, 15 minutes a game. And he's not going to be happy with that. So in a way, you've got to figure that out if you're a coach right now, is right. Like, you're paying all these dudes money. They have expectations. Obviously, Bill Self wants more depth than he had a year ago. But you also have to have guys in those like 9th, 10th spot that understand their roles. And like El Marco Jackson's got to be one of those guys this year, right? He's a role guy. He's probably going to play less than he did a year ago. Zach Clements is going to come out of his red shirt and play a little bit and play probably 12, 15, 18 minutes a game. But look at their top 7, Rob, and tell me you can find a better top 7 right now in the country. I know we're going to get to our top 10 preseason, right now in a little bit, but like, look at it. You've got 3 core guys back, 3 really good players, right? Hunter Dickinson, DeJuan Harris, and KJ Adams, who are all veterans, who are there, who've known the system, all that. And then you add AJ Storr, Rylan Griffin, Zeke Mayo. Griffin and Mayo address a huge need of perimeter shooting that Kansas didn't have last year. And AJ Storr addresses a huge need, a guy that can go get a bucket off the bounce. So, to me, this team fits together well now, something it did not do a year ago.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I do think it is interesting, though, with Riley reopening his recruitment is something that I was thinking about the last couple of days, right? Where we've kind of seen all of the best transfers outside of Great Osterwald, all of the best transfers that don't also have their name in the NBA draft and are going through that process. Most of them have already committed to places, but kind of like what happens when you are recruiting incoming freshmen, right? Like that doesn't really matter until somebody puts pen to paper and signs an NLI, right? Not an NIL, signs an NLI, a National Letter of Intent. And we kind of see this often with the freshman recruiting process where people will commit early in the process, then reopen their commitment. And whether that's because they got a better offer from somewhere else, whether that's because they were, I don't want to say recruited over, but there were more players that came in at their position, kind of like what we saw here with Riley Kugel at Kansas. But I do wonder if there are going to be coaches that are flush with NIL funds right now because they were promised all this money and they weren't able to actually spend it on some of the players that they wanted to go out and get. And instead of saying, you know what, I'm going to overpay for somebody that's still in the portal, I'm going to go out and try to snag one of these guys by overpaying for somebody that's on someone else's roster in pencil right now. Is that something that could happen? And is that happening behind the scenes in college basketball in the world of the transfer portal?
Yeah, of course. I mean, everybody out there understood what Kansas did. And you look at the numbers, and it could be that way at Arkansas at some point, right? If Calipari adds 2-3 more dudes, somebody's going to look at that roster and say, well, somebody's going to be unhappy there. Let me talk to his people. Now, hopefully there aren't coaches dumb enough to reach out directly to these kids that aren't in the portal. You know, that's my biggest thing right now. If there are, I can't wait to get a hold of those texts, Rob. Because if those texts get to me, I will absolutely put them out there publicly. Because to me, if you're dumb enough to go and reach out to a kid directly that's not in the portal, then you deserve to have that text be out there publicly. Most people are going to their AU coaches, their mentors, all that. That's been going on for years, though. You know, I know Kim English put out a tweet about, you know, people messing with Bryce Hopkins, and I understood it, but like that's nothing new. That's really nothing new. That's been going on for years to get kids to transfer. And maybe they went directly to Bryce. I don't know if that's the case or not. If they did, again, that's absolutely stupid. But, you know, 10, 15 years ago, they still would have been trying to get Bryce to transfer. They just would have been talking to Bryce's, you know, AU coaches, high school coaches, mentor, whoever it is. So all this stuff is going on right now. It's a game being played by everybody because, like you said, when you miss on some dudes and you got to go to your B-list guys, and now there's just not a lot of guys out there because you went all in on some guys, you got to figure it out, and that includes poaching or trying to poach from other people's rosters.
All right, let's just – I know that is kind of new, and I don't think that Riley's released an official list yet. But when he committed to Kansas, the top four were Arizona, UConn, Houston, and Kansas. I do not believe UConn is adding anybody else from the transfer portal this year. I also don't believe that he was actually being recruited by UConn when he put them on the list. He doesn't strike me as a Houston kind of a player. Would it fit at Arizona if Caleb Love is gone? And if not, if you could kind of play matchmaker here, where would you take Riley Kugel, a guy who, like, let's be honest, has first round caliber talent that hasn't quite put it all together yet? Where's a good fit for him to be and play this next season of college basketball?
Yeah, I think Arizona would be a spot if Caleb Love doesn't come back that fits him. But like you said, his original list when he came out with it, out of those four schools, two of them weren't really recruiting him. And I'm not sure they would have taken him. But again, Houston, they're set. They're set. UConn's set at this point. You know, unless Caravan doesn't come back, and then certainly there's some minutes on the table there. But, you know, I think Arizona. But again, if you're Riley this time around, you might as well wait another week or two and see these guys that are right now in the portal and in the draft process and see what happens with those guys. Because what you don't want to have happen is go somewhere else like Arizona and then have Caleb Love withdraw from the draft. And then you're looking at being, you know, the ninth man again.
Yeah. I would just say, you know, there's going to be lots of minutes and lots of shots available at Kentucky and at Arkansas, and I know that they have NIL money to spend. And I do know that both of those programs could use another veteran piece in their backcourt that knows the SEC.
See, I would look more. If I'm him, I'm looking. I'm scrapping my list. I'm starting over from scratch, and I'm looking at places like Oklahoma. That have some NIL money, that just missed on Kadari Richmond, that have lost a bunch of dudes to the portal. They've obviously got, again, a pretty good NIL bankroll because they got Kadari on campus. So those are the types of places, if I'm Riley Kugel, that I would look at of trying to be.
You know what else would make a lot of sense in that same vein? You look at one of the Jayhawks' biggest rivals. You just got to head about 2 hours rest. You get on, what is that, I-80 and head down. Is it I-70 or I-80? I can never keep them track. Whatever it is, jump on the highway, head about 2 hours west down to Manhattan. I know that Bullet Manhattan Brewing Company, I don't think that they would mind having a guy like a Riley Kugel available to them. All right, let's talk about the preseason top 10 and where that kind of stands right now, because I think we were both in agreement that that Kansas should be the preseason number one, right? Does that change without Riley Kugel, and does that change for you with a team like Baylor getting Norchad Omier or a team like Alabama getting Cliff Amori?
I mean, right now it's 1A and 1B to me. If Mark Sears comes back to Alabama, I think you're talking right now Kansas and Alabama, 1A and 1B, because what Alabama was able to do getting that rim protector in Big Cliff, that's something they didn't have this past year. So, again, I probably would go Kansas because they added offensively. They really, really shored up their weaknesses from this year. But defensively, they had their issues with Hunter. And they're going to have to figure that out next year, Rob. That's still going to be I think where Alabama got a lot better defensively, obviously Kansas got a lot better offensively. So, listen, if it's close, and this is no disrespect to Nate Oates, but Nate, you're not Bill Self. So if it's close, I'm going to go the Hall of Fame head coach in Kansas slightly over Alabama. I'm going to go 1A Kansas, 1B Alabama today.
Yeah, today I think there's no question you have to go Kansas over Alabama because there's a certain percentage chance that Mark Sears does not come back, right? Like as of right now, I don't think that you can project Mark Sears on the roster with a 100% certainty. So you got to have Kansas number one over Alabama. I would have Iowa State and Houston and Baylor right there in the mix for the top five. I don't think we're giving enough credit to Gonzaga. And we kind of talked about this a little bit on last week's show, but excuse me, with Khalif Battle, Ryan Nembhard back, assuming they get Michael Ajay to kind of be that like 3/4 guy, I really love what the Bulldogs have put together here. And then when you kind of get to the back end of the top 10, like I'm not ready to put Arizona in that conversation. I think Duke still needs to add another couple of role guys, another couple of pieces. And if I'm North Carolina, I want to get a big guy. My big question to you is, where do you have UConn right now? We've heard Dan Hurley say that he believes this is his most talented roster that he's ever had. And if you're looking strictly based off recruiting rankings, that probably is true. But I would also say there's a chance that you lose 5 guys to the NBA this year after losing 3 guys to the NBA 2 years ago. And that's just that talent exodus seems just so hard to overcome.
How many edibles do you think Dan ate in the weirdo room before he said that?
I don't think Dan Hurley would be an edibles kind of a guy. He strikes me more as someone that's going to be like ripping 2-foot bongs if he's gonna partake in marijuana. He seems like a 2-foot bong, like a shot in a beer kind of a guy. Like there's no half measures with him. He's not just going to take an edible to eat an edible.
I have UConn right now because of Hurley. I have them at 4. I have them at 4 in the country preseason.
Are you with Caravan or without Caravan?
I don't care. I just trust Hurley enough to figure this thing out. I mean, obviously, Caravan's going to be a big difference, right? We know with Caravan, I might move him to 1. I don't know. But even without Caravan, I have him at 4. To me,
all right, we got about, not to cut you off, we got about 15 seconds here. Give me real quick. Just roll through your preseason top 10. What you got?
Yeah, Kansas, Alabama, Iowa State, UConn, Houston, Carolina, Duke, Baylor, Creighton, Gonzaga. I have Creighton.
So the changes I would make, I would have Houston at 4. I would have Gonzaga at 5. I would have Baylor at 6. And then I'm kind of on the same track. I think UConn, North Carolina, Duke, you got to get in there back into the top 10. The Creighton one is interesting. I'm going to throw a curveball at you. I'm going to say Auburn, number 10 team in college basketball. They bring in JP Pegues. They bring back Janai Broome, who for my money is going to end up being a preseason first-team All-American. I like the Tigers to sneak into the top 10. We know who we didn't have in the top 10, either of us? Indiana and Purdue. We're going to break down which of those two rosters we like more, Matt Painter or Mike Woodson, coming up next.
Whether you are a world-class athlete or a podcaster like me, we all understand the importance of mental and physical well-being and proper recovery for top-notch performance. After a 6-month season loaded with cross-country travel, I can promise you that proper recovery is a priority for me these days. That's why I'm excited that Unified Healing is sponsoring this episode of the Field of 68. Unified Healing is a new and super innovative global network of wellness centers powered by Energy Enhancement System, or the EE system. If you haven't heard of the EE system yet, you'll want to listen up. This technology promotes wellness, deep relaxation, purification, and rejuvenation. Whether you're here in New Jersey or at one of the hundreds of other locations across the globe, access to a center is easy and affordable. If you're interested in experiencing the EE system technology for yourself, go to unifiedhealing.com/unified68 to learn more and find a center near you. That's UNIFYD healing.com/UNIFYD, the number 6, the number 8. No material or testimonials on the Unified Healing website are intended to be viewed as medical advice or as a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified healthcare provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition or treatment, and before undertaking a new healthcare regimen, including the EE system.
Welcome back to the Thursday evening edition of the Field of 68 After Dark. Hang with us for about another 15 minutes. We're going to hear from Mark Pope as part of our Off the Carousel series. He will be joining us. Well, I say us. He's going to be joining Jeff Goodman. I was not cool enough to get an invite to the Zoom interview when these two hung out this week. I want to play a game of Would You Rather, Jeff, and I think that this is going to be fun. I think we're going to piss a lot of people off, and I do think that we're going to be on opposite sides of a lot of this. So I want to start with this, and we got about 5 minutes. Producer Dagan, if you could let us know when we get close to about 5 minutes so we can get through all three of these. Otherwise, Jeff and I would just sit here and argue for an hour about Indiana versus Purdue. Take the coaching out of it, right? Let's just say that you're the one in charge, which probably means no matter who it would be, you're going to get 0 wins in college basketball this season. But which roster, right? Which roster do you like more? Do you like Indiana's roster more, or do you like Purdue's roster more?
Ooh, boy, this is not an easy one. I got to tell you, like, this is not easy at all. I like Indiana's roster better. I think I like it better. They're just men. You look at them, and I feel like they're bigger, they're stronger, they're more experienced. You look inside, obviously, and you've got Malik Renew and Umar Ballo, Miles Rice coming in with again, the year he had at Washington State was absolutely incredible. You got some guys back from that team. Trey Galloway is more of a piece now with the addition of Miles Rice and Kenny Carlisle. And, to me, again, Luke Goody comes in. He can shoot it. I like Purdue's roster. I think it's good all the way around. It's deep. I just don't know where they have that high-end dude that's going to Cam Heidi's going to take a jump. I love Braden Smith. Fletcher Lawyer was inconsistent last year. He's got to bulk up a little bit, hit those shakes. Whatever you did to gain all the weight you did this year, you should be advising him how to put on some LBs. But I'll take Indiana's roster. They got a lot more money too. It should be better. It should be a better roster because they got like $4 million in NIL.
Yeah, the way to put on weight, Fletcher, is to drink a lot of beer and don't work out enough. Like that's the big combination of things that you should do if you want to be able to get a physique like this. They don't call it a dad bod anymore, Goodman. They call it a father figure these days, just so you know.
Okay.
So I actually like the Indiana roster a little bit more myself. I think I'm higher on Purdue than you are in terms of what they have coming back. Like I think Braden Smith and Fletcher Lawyer might end up being the best backcourt in college basketball. I think there's an argument you could make about that. And like you said, like Cam Heide and Miles Colvin, Trey Kaufman around, they got a bunch of guys that are going to put up big numbers and have great years that were Purdue'd into being role players alongside Zach Edey. And what I mean by that is I think they have guys that kind of accept that and understand that like we're going to play a role because we got the best player in college basketball and we're going to have a chance to win a title to do this. So I'm buying into them. But I think that if you give me the top 8 on Indiana and give me someone I'm not ready to say that like Mike Woodson is not the guy that can do this because I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt and kind of see the light, right? And have that breakthrough where he says,
him? Like, do you trust Mike Woodson in these situations?
I don't want to say I distrust him because I think that he has more perimeter weapons at his disposal. So I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt and say, hey, you know what? Maybe he will be able to figure this out and be able to realize that like our best lineup is going to have Mackenzie Mbako at the 4 and Miles Rice at the 1 and 2 shooters next to him, right? I think that he can, if he's doing his homework and he watched what UConn did the last 2 years, he might realize, hey, you know what? If we give Umar Ballo 20 minutes and Malik Renaud 20 minutes and play 5 minutes a game where they're on the floor together, that might be the best case scenario for the Indiana Hoosiers overall. So I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt, but I do like the Indiana roster more. All right, let's go to the next one. And I think I know where we're both
real quick, before you get to it, real quick. Where would you have, if Matt Painter was coaching this Indiana roster, where would you have him ranked in the preseason?
In the 10 to 15 range. I'll probably have Indiana in the 10 to 15 range. I'll probably have Purdue in the 10 to 15 range. I mean, I think Matt Painter, let's put it like this. If you switch the coaches with these two rosters, I probably right now have Purdue closer to 10 and Indiana closer to 15, and I would flip-flop that with the coaches, where if Matt Painter had Indiana, I'd have them closer to 10 and Purdue closer to 15. Does that make sense?
That's fair.
Yeah. All right. The next one we're going to do, would you rather have UConn's roster or Kansas roster right now in 2024?
I'll take Kansas's roster. Again, I know I'm probably going to regret this at the end of the day. They got key guys back. And I know they weren't great last year, but part of why they weren't great was, again, not the fault of KJ Adams or DeJuan Harris or Hunter Dickinson. They just didn't have enough around them. They just didn't have shooting around those guys. So as I said earlier, I love the additions that this Kansas staff pulled in with A.J. Storr, with Rylan Griffin, with Zeke Mayo. I think Big Flory Badunga is a beast when he wants to be. If he plays like I saw him a couple summers ago, I mean, he's only like 6'7", but he's got long arms, and man, can he get after it. You and I saw him a few times over the last couple summers, and defensively, and he's a guy that you don't have to run a lot for. He'll be great coming off the bench for them, giving them a different look. And I think, like, again, Marco Jackson, Zach Clements will help. UConn's roster is good, Rob. It's really good, but I'm still interested to see how this group, comes together, right? Like Aiden Mahaney, how is he under Hurley? Terrace Reed, he's good, but he's not, as you call, the Great Wall of Bristol. Like he's not even close to that. He's really good defensively, but Liam McNeely, can he be a freshman that adapts? They're going to need him to. Like if Caravan doesn't come back, like Liam McNeely can't come out of the gates slow. He's got to make shots as a freshman right away. That's a lot to ask.
Yeah, well, if Alex Caravan doesn't come back, then there's no argument to make that UConn has a better roster. Like as much as I want to put on my UConn tinted glasses, like I think you would probably take 3 players on Kansas before you got to the first guy before the season, before you got to the first guy that you would take off of the UConn roster without Alex Caravan. With him back, though, here's the argument I would make. What we've seen every year out of UConn players is someone make a leap, right? And I've made this point plenty of times, right? And I do believe that if Alex Caravan comes back to school, he's going to be the guy that's kind of in that All-American conversation. I think he'd be like a 16 to 17 point per game guy, shoot close to 40% from 3, get you a block and a steal a game, get 7 or 8 rebounds a game, and be a really efficient scorer in the offense, right? I think that Liam McNeely can do a lot of the things within UConn's offense that Cam Spencer did, not quite at that level, but I think that you'll be able to run the same stuff that you were running with him. And I can squint and I can see Aiden Mahaney being able to function as like the late clock guy, kind of in a role similar to what Tristan Newton did this year. But the biggest thing is going to be where you see the leaps from the guys that are going to be sophomores and Samson Johnson specifically, right? You are going to need Jalen Stewart and Solo Ball to take a massive step forward this year. One of those 2 guys has got to be an all-conference guy. And I think both of them have to be, at least at the very minimum, double-digit per game scores, right? You got to have Jaden Ross take a step forward. You need Samson Johnson, who had moments where he looked unbelievable last year and moments where he looked like you couldn't put him on the floor against a good team and be able to be a competitor. Like, he had really bad moments and really good moments. You got to find a level of consistency with him. So if you have that sophomore class take their sophomore leap, then I think that you can kind of squint and say, I could tell myself a story about how this roster is going to be better than the Kansas roster. But there's a lot of ifs there when you're saying if Alex Caravan comes back and if Solo Ball, who averaged 3.3 points per game, becomes an all-league guy.
You're his agent. You're Alex Caravan's agent. Should he come back?
I don't think that you can give him an answer right now. I think I've talked about this before. I think the advice you give Caravan is go through the process, find out where your floor is in terms of the money that you would make next year, whether that's you get a guarantee at like 48, you get a guarantee at 38, you get someone saying no matter what happens, we're going to get you a two-way.
Those are two-way numbers, though.
So I think what you do is you figure out what the floor is after going through the process as if you're gone, and then go back and say, okay, am I okay with where this is versus the potential of coming back to school and maybe being a first round pick and getting this guaranteed money? If you are okay being on a 2-way contract in an organization that's going to be able to develop you, where you feel like you have a good path to being a rotational guy in the league in 2 years, then I think you probably go. If you don't like where you're ending up and you come back to school and you make probably not the same, but like enough money in NIL, and you give yourself a chance to potentially be a first round pick, knowing that your floor is always going to, like, he is what he is. He's like an NBA role player. I think that it's there's no bad choice here. It's just going to depend on where are you going to be valued and are you okay with what that value is? All right.
Come back.
What?
Come back and three-peat. Come back and three-peat.
That would be, I would not complain about that at all. I'd be a big fan of that. All right, let's talk about this one, because I think this one is going to get I don't think anyone's going to have a strong opinion on this. Whose roster would you rather have? Mark Pope at Kentucky or John Calipari at Arkansas? Right now, as of today, not assuming what they could get, but right now, as of today.
Yeah, I mean, I'm taking Arkansas. I'm taking Arkansas because, again, they got the high-end talent. I like what Mark Pope's put together. A lot of good players, but they're missing a dude. And you know who's got a dude, Rob? John Calipari. He's got Nelly Davis. That's a dude. That's a guy who's proven it at the highest level. He's gotten to the Final Four. He carried FAU for most of the last season. And I love the pieces, honestly, that he's added so far. Like, I love Thiero. Like, I think he's perfect for what they needed. A guy that's just, like, energy, plays hard, is going to guard. Because these freshmen, we don't know how good they're going to be. Like Boogie Fland and Carter Knox and Billy Richmond. We got no idea. But I like the group that he's put together so far. Jonas Adu up front, Big Z, Little Z, Medium Z, whatever you want to call them. And again, I think Pope's done a nice job, and we'll talk to him about his roster here in a bit. But Arkansas, to me, they're probably going to add another guy or two. Yeah, the Razorbacks roster is superior.
So I would go with Kentucky, because I think that what you're looking at with Arkansas is a team where you're basically going to have to rely on Nelly Davis to carry you through and hope that the freshmen are good enough to make it so that he's not scoring 33 a night in games where you go like 18 and 14. And I think that Kentucky, with some of the veteran pieces that they've brought in, some of the role players they brought in, and specifically some of the guys that you can just know what you're going to get from them, Lamont Butler, Otega Owe, Amari Williams. I think Kobe Brea falls into that category as well. Like I think that there are enough good basketball players that you can say that the floor for Kentucky is going to be higher. And then you just kind of bank on the idea like maybe Otega Owe takes the Buddy Hield leap and figures out how to be able to shoot, right? Like if you kind of squint and look at his growth path from a freshman to a sophomore, it's not all that different from what Buddy Hield did in his first 2 years at Oklahoma. So I think you kind of hope for that. And maybe they get Jackson Robinson, maybe Wooga Poplar or Chaz Lanier decides that they're going to end up at Kentucky. So I at this point, I would probably take the Kentucky roster and just say there's enough on there to win 22 games in college basketball, finish in the top 4 in the SEC, and get yourself a seed that is good enough where you can win a game and have a puncher's chance at winning 2 games in the NCAA tournament. Where I think with Arkansas, you got the best player, and you got the best player at the most important position. I just don't know if they have the best roster, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that's listen, again, I think they've both got their flaws right now. They've both done a good job putting together rosters. They're just very different in the look and feel of them, which doesn't surprise me.
It's almost like it's not ideal to put together an entire roster of 13 basketball players in the span of 3 weeks. Like it's almost like that's not what you want to do,
And that's why it's going to be hard for both of them. It's going to be very difficult for both of them to be consistent this year. I think they're both going to have their highs and their lows. It's going to be a roller coaster for both programs, for both coaches, for both teams, because you're throwing all these guys together. That's why I like what Cal's done a little bit more, because he's kept some of his guys from Kentucky and bringing them to Arkansas. I like that.
Yeah, there is a little bit more consistency, and that's also part of why I think that getting Jackson Robinson would be a really, really nice addition, because you got someone that kind of understands the culture, understands the offense and the defense, understands what Pope is going to be like as a coach. So I hear what you're saying there, and it does not fall on deaf ears, even though most of what you say falls on deaf ears over here. Speaking of Kentucky, we are going to be hearing next from the new Kentucky head coach, Mark Pope. He's going to tell you about how he got the job, how long it took him to figure out that he wanted it, and the value of coming back to Kentucky as a Wildcat. That's next.
If you haven't heard by now, we have partnered with BetMGM Sportsbook. We're going to be using BetMGM lines to make all of our picks, and we'll have special offers for the listeners, the viewers of the Field of 68 throughout the year. If you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, you can use bonus code FIELD, and you will get up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. The best part, all you need to do is deposit and bet $10 of your own hard-earned money to be eligible. Here's how you make it work. Download the BetMGM app and sign up using that bonus code FIELD. Deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game, and you will receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets if your bet loses. Just make sure that you use that bonus code FIELD when you sign up. BetMGM is going to have some fun offers available throughout the NBA playoffs. Bet insurance tokens, odds boost, and what I love, a nice parlay boost or two from time to time, as well as a ridiculous array of player prop bets for any sport that you could possibly imagine betting on. BetMGM is and always will be the king of the prop bet. So go download the BetMGM app, use the bonus code FIELD, and sign up today. And while I've got you, a quick request. The best way to support the Field of 68 content that you get for free is to engage with us. Rate and review the podcast. Like and share the YouTube videos. Tell your friends about us. It all helps in a world where the algorithm is king. And now, back to the show.
All right, now pleased to be joined by No, you're not at BYU anymore, are you? You're at Kentucky now. This is just, I don't know, man. Like, I don't know how long it's going to take me to get used to, because how about this? This is the first time, Mark Pope, that I have interviewed the Kentucky head coach like in a formal interview in my entire career. I've been doing this 20 plus years. I have never actually sat down and done an interview. I talked to Cal a few years ago. Didn't go that well. Bully Clyde and I, not a big fan. I'll be transparent there. And Tubby, when I got in, I just didn't have that type of relationship. Love Tubby. But this is the first time. So this is kind of an honor for me to actually be talking and on good terms with a Kentucky head coach. I like it.
Come on, man. I'm so excited to be on. And you're beautiful. You're like the truth box of college basketball. Love it or hate it, you get to tell the truth, man. I dig it.
How you doing? So first, can we go back? I want to go back to this. I want to go back to when you were getting into coaching and you called Mark Fox when he was at Georgia and you were at Columbia Medical School. Like, how dumb are you that you were going to give up? You did give up medical school to go make how much money for Mark Fox?
Well, so here's the deal. So Coach Fox and I have been dear friends forever, right? He was a GA when I was at the University of Washington as a player. And we spent an unbelievable amount of time together working out on the court. He was so good to me. Fast forward. He's killing it in coaching. I'm in medical school. I finished my first year. I'm not quite sure that like this is the deal for me. I call Fox. He says, "You're crazy. Don't ever do this." We kept talking for the next 3 years. I'm starting my 4th year, and Coach Fox gets the Georgia job. And then it's kind of like, hey, if you're ever going to do this, this is the time. And so I'm like, yeah, I'm going. Coach is like, come be my assistant. But he didn't finish. He just said, come be my assistant. He didn't say, come be my assistant to the director of operations. So I was making a whopping $24,000 a year, folding laundry and handing out water for Coach Fox. And it was actually one of the great experiences of my life, to be honest with you.
All right. What type of doctor would you have been? Like, I'm dying to know.
I would have been a bad doctor. First of all, it's hard for me to stay serious for more than a few minutes. Like my ability to stay focused and like, I would have been in question, but, I was actually thinking about emergency medicine. I went in thinking orthopedic surgery, after doing kind of rotations for a full year, my 3rd year of medical school. I was kind of leaning more towards maybe an emergency medicine field, which tells you everything you need to know. Like I was kind of thinking about lifestyle. I was like, well, you work 15 days and you're off 15 days and you kind of do other stuff. And I'm like, man, I'm not serving anyone well if I don't want to be fully in.
Your bedside manner, though. They always talk about doctors' bedside manner. I'm not sure how it would have worked with you, Again, it's funny. I wonder if Kentucky fans know kind of who you are yet and your personality. Obviously you played there, but how has your personality changed since you were a player? Because under Pitino, I'm not sure how much you could even show your personality back then.
Well, yeah, I don't know. I don't know how to answer that question because I'm still terrified of Coach. And so if I say the wrong thing, he's going to kill me. Listen, I think one of the great things about my relationship with Kentucky is that we kind of got to grow up together. Like there's, right now, it just tells you how old I am. I over the last 3 weeks, I've had so many students here be like, my mom, like, watch, my dad had your jersey, right? So, it does make me feel aged, but I don't know. I feel like I feel like I feel like this is home, and I feel like certainly we're going to get to know each other in a new capacity, but I feel like I do. This feels like home, and when I first got here, and we were kind of doing the tour where you're going around speaking to groups. And it was like, I'd be standing there talking to a group of several hundred people. And as I'm speaking, this because you speak in public a lot. As I'm speaking and kind of making eye contact with people, I'm like, oh my gosh, like this is a teammate, or this is one of my teachers from 30 years ago, or, this. And so that's just been such a spectacular experience for me. I've loved every second of it.
Yeah, pretty cool. Pretty cool to come back home and get the ovation that you got when you walked in to Rupp. I mean, that had to be like one of those surreal moments. Obviously, you got it as a player, but it's different when you walk in and everybody is so excited to see you. Like, I don't know if I've ever seen that, Pope. I don't know if I've ever seen a coach get that type of welcome back for you as you got when you walked into Rupp.
Well, there's definitely never been an introductory press conference like that ever in the history of the world. Like, that's the craziest thing you've ever seen, right?
Yes.
But here's the beauty of it. It actually didn't have a lot to do with me. Like, that was Big Blue Nation, like, gathering together and saying, this is who we are, and this is why this place is different. Like, it was almost like, it was more of like, I don't think it was, I just think it was Big Blue Nation raising up and saying, hey, we got your back, and let's go do what people might not think we can do. It was, I'm telling you, I've never seen anything like it in any sport anywhere in the history of the world. It was incredible.
All right. So you were on our set. I wasn't there in Phoenix. I was still at the arena doing some actual work, but you came by, and I forget, it was Dauster, probably Randolph Childress, and John Henson. Were they all there?
I think so. Yeah, I think so.
So you came on with them, and that was like a day before everything broke loose, right? A day before, I think, before Cal took the Arkansas job. Take me through, if you can, maybe a condensed version, but like how this whole thing went, and it went quick, because I remember calling you, and I had a few in me that night. I was at my my nephew's wedding rehearsal in Newport, Rhode Island, calling you, and you were scared. And I'll give you credit. You tried to say nothing. You tried to say nothing to me. It kind of worked. But just take me through that process of how it went, if you can, and how quickly it went.
Yeah, so one of my favorite pictures probably for the rest of my life is going to be Saturday morning. I was at the hotel. I just finished a workout, and I walked into the lounge, and there was Cal and Tubby sitting there together. And so I fanboyed them. They've both been so great and generous to me. So I walked up and I was like, hey guys, let me just jump in here and take a picture. And we talked for a second. I have a picture, like a selfie of the three of us.
No way.
And in fact, like, I just remember thinking and kind of talking to Cal at the time just about college basketball and where it was and everything. And I genuinely think, I don't know all the details of Tubby's life and Cal's life at the time, but I genuinely think that we all just were going about our business. And then within 30 hours, like, the world got turned upside down, certainly for Cal, as new opportunities presented themselves to him. And then it was just, 4 days of mayhem. And then it wasn't until Thursday that I actually was on a Zoom with Mitch. And that was awesome. I think he's incredible. I just think he's incredible. And then Thursday night, because it's hard to keep any secrets at Kentucky. Thursday night, things kind of broke in one way or another. And then Friday, Kentucky made an official announcement. And then Sunday, we were walking into 24,000 fans in Rupp Arena. And it was everything you could imagine in between. It's pretty special.
So since, I don't know how many days it's been now. What's it been? 3 weeks, 4 weeks?
We're right at 3 weeks-ish. Yeah.
Crazy. It's only been 3 weeks.
Yeah.
You got 9 players. You got 9 players on scholarship. That's pretty good. 9 players in 3 weeks.
Yep.
You haven't slept much. You actually look pretty good for somebody that, probably hasn't gotten a lot of sleep over the last few weeks. Because you and I have talked about this at BYU, the challenges you faced.
Yep.
And let's face it, you faced some. There's some
Sure.
advantages to that job too,
Yep.
but it's harder to get maybe as many athletes as you would probably like to get. Now you're at Kentucky. You can put together a team that there aren't many limitations on what you're able to do at Kentucky. You can probably construct this team to some degree how you want. Have you been able to do that so far, or has it just been such mayhem that it's like, we got to take what we can get at this point. We'll figure it out later. You obviously want to put together a team that fits, but it's hard to do when so much is coming at you so quickly, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, first, if you let me digress, I mean, my experience at BYU was incredible. Like there's so many people there that I love dearly. That administration and that fan base and friends and family there were so incredible to me, and I think that's an incredible job. I think it's really an awesome job, and Kevin is going to crush it there and kind of go next level. And I'm super excited about that. We'll have love in my heart for BYU forever. And the answer to that is yes, like Kentucky is Kentucky, right? It's I mean, as a staff now, we just kind of walk around shaking our head as we encounter everything that's about Kentucky, and that's what we say over. It's Kentucky. Like there's no other way to say it. It's Kentucky. It's the mecca of college basketball. It's you know, and every statistic bears it out. Win totals bear it out. Banners bear it out. It's just a different place. And so you take that, and then you're working in a really condensed window, right? With where it's just everything happens so fast, and some interesting things happen. As what you know, I think of myself as an offensive minded coach, and the first 3 kids that we signed out of the portal were 3 of the best defenders in the country. Like I think Lamont Butler, I think is probably the best defensive backcourt player in the country. And Ortega is right there with him. And then Amari is probably the best rim protecting defender in the entire country. And so, you know, I think that was awesome. Actually, it made me feel so settled, so great. Clearly, those guys are really talented offensive players also, but and so they fit great. And then piece by piece, what we have now is we have a roster of 9 that we think will grow here in the next week or so. But so we've been really blessed to put together a roster that I think fits like brilliantly what we're trying to do. Like Andrew Carr was born to play for us. Yeah. And Kobe Brea is the most efficient. Look it up. He's the most efficient high major player in the last decade offensively. He's at 1.33 points per possession last year. The next closest guy is at 1.31. I've never seen numbers like what he did last year ever. And he is like exactly us, right? And you think about Kerr, Chris, and Colin Chandler and this whole group, you know, Brandon Garrison, like this dude is just a rising star. So I think the pieces are incredible with how they fit together and how they fit us. And we couldn't be more excited. And then, you know, one of the best mornings I've had is Jason Hart walked in the office and he's like, man, I don't know. I watched film on this Travis Perry last night. He's like, that dude's a baller, right? And so I like
Colin Chandler. Hey, when I saw Colin Chandler a couple summers ago,
yeah,
that dude can play.
Well, and listen, I just flew out to welcome him home. He's been serving a service mission, a church mission for the last 2 years. He's one of the most incredible young men you're ever going to meet. I mean, you think about that. He just he's a top 25 player in the country, and he just set it aside to go serve people in one of the poorest countries in the world, in Western Africa, and then in DC, and then in London. And, you know, all that, you think about how incredible this young man is. And then as a very petty coach, he walked off the airport. I'm telling you, he's 2 inches taller, man. I was like,
hey, his hair. It's his hair, though. Come on.
Oh no, he's taller, man. He's and he's going to be a star. Like it just is. So when you ask the question, I know that's a long answer, but we kind of backed our way into what I think is a really, really intriguing roster for us that fits us. And I think these guys fit together. I think every single one of these guys is elite level character. I think this Lamont Butler is like a world-class winner and a world-class leader. And I think all the rest of these guys fit that way. I'm super excited about this group.
All right. Well, listen, we'll talk soon. Mark Pope, new Kentucky head coach. Congrats, and I'll see you in July.
Thanks, Jeff. Appreciate you.
By now, you guys have surely heard about Autograph, an app founded by Tom Brady with the intention of disrupting the way that fans consume content covering their favorite teams. Here's how the app works. All of the podcasters and bloggers and digital creators covering a team have their content sent to that team's page in Autograph. Instead of having to bounce from site to site or try to navigate the only safe for work spaces that are left on X, you just scroll through Autograph. This isn't a hard sell. This is the truth. I'm a UConn fan. I use the Autograph app to keep up with the writers I read and the pods that I listen to. The best part is that every piece of content that you consume gives you reward points. The more you get, the more chances you have at things like discounted tickets and signed memorabilia. Here's the best part. We've partnered with Autograph to donate $1 to the V Foundation every time someone downloads the app using the code F68 with a minimum of $2,500 getting donated. The app is free, so download using the code F68 and help us raise some money and give Autograph a try. I promise you it will be worth it. And while we're here, a quick reminder, make sure that you subscribe to the Daily. We have new landing pages with deep dives into each coaching change, as well as a tracker that provides scouting reports on the transfers that have entered the portal that you are going to want to know about. It's just $50 for the year, which means that for less than $1 per week, you get analysis that our insiders send direct to your inbox every single morning. Hit the link below to subscribe.
Well, welcome back to the Thursday evening edition of the Field of 68 After Dark. We thank Mark Pope for joining us. Jeff, I will say this about Mark Pope. I always feel energized after listening to him talk. I'm always like ready to run through a wall, and I think that's part of why he's been able to get some of the guys that he's gotten already at Kentucky. It just, I don't know. There's a vibe and an energy about him. It's a little like Scott Drew, where like you would think at face value, some of that might be like fake and him putting on an act, but no, that's just who he is and why he is as successful as he's been as a basketball coach. All right, I want to talk about some of the players that are left in the portal right now. It's actually an interesting spot to be in. We teased this a little bit earlier, but a lot of the guys, when you look at these top 100, top 150 transfers, these are the best transfers rankings. Most of the guys that are left near the top of those rankings that are uncommitted are players that are also going through the NBA draft process, which means we probably won't have an answer on what they're doing for another probably 4 weeks until the deadline to pull your name out of the draft. The one guy that's not on that list, Great Osibor from Utah State. We've seen him make a visit to Kentucky. We've seen him make a visit, I believe, to Louisville, and he just finished up his visit to Washington. I think Texas Tech is the 4th school that is in the mix, although I don't know if he's still considering Kentucky. What can you tell us about Great Osibor?
So, yes, he went to Kentucky, but it wasn't a real visit. Then he went to Louisville, Texas Tech, and he's getting back from Washington today. So, really, there's 3 schools still in the mix right now. High demand NIL-wise for Great Osibor, the Utah State transfer. Obviously all 3 of these schools need him. Danny Sprinkle being the last visit, coached him last year at Utah State, coached him at Montana State. So there's that connection there. Texas Tech, man, if they got him, and we know they've got deep pockets, we know they got a crazy fan base. And then Louisville. I mean, think about this, Rob. All those Louisville kids that came in this year, think about what they have an opportunity to do if they flip this thing this year and go to the NCAA tournament and become nationally relevant. They're going to be looked at as like heroes forever, right? Because like it's been such a shit show for the last couple of years with that program that like they have a chance to honestly do something special this year, and the fans will be all over it if they're good. I mean, they just got to be good, but imagine if they make the NCAA tournament. So I don't know where he ends up. I would say this to me. I think if you put him at Washington, there's still probably an NIT team. If you put him at Texas Tech, yeah, they're probably a tournament team. They probably are close to it. I think if you put him at Louisville with all the pieces that Pat Kelsey's assembled so far, with the most recent being Chucky Hepburn at the point, I think Louisville's got a chance to be like sneaky good. Like I don't know, maybe I don't want to say second weekend good, but good.
Yeah, I mean, I think that your read on that is right. Like, I think Louisville is already the best of those 3 programs, and I think if you go out and add a guy that averaged 17 and 8 last year at at Utah State in a really good Mountain West probably is going to help him there. The one thing I would say is that, people are going to look at the height and the position and the numbers and kind of assume like this is a 5-man. He can be a defensive anchor. He can be a rim protector. And that's not what he is really. Like his value is kind of as a stretcher. Like he is a pure power forward. And I do think that there would be, I don't know if that's necessarily the best fit on what Louisville's roster currently is, but I also think that when you are in a situation where you're like a borderline top 25 team and you have a chance to add a guy that is going to average probably, like if I had to set the line on it, I would say probably about 14 points and 8.5 rebounds at Louisville next season. I think you probably have to go out and try to get that guy if you are Pat Kelsey. So that seems like it would be the best fit for him. What about DJ Wagner? If you're DJ Wagner and you look at the success that you had last season playing for Coach Cal at Kentucky, are you following him to Arkansas? Are you opening this thing up and seeing if you can find someplace else to play at? Like, are you trusting that relationship even, is that where the value of starting him the entire year over Reed Shepherd and Robert Dillingham, who are both going to go like top 10 in this draft? Is that where you're able to kind of maintain that relationship? Was this Cal's secret plan all along? I'm going to bring these guys that are better off the bench just so that when I get my new job, I'm going to be able to have DJ Wagner come with me. Is this Cal playing the long game here?
I don't like the fit with Nelly Davis. The fit at all with DJ Wagner and Nelly Davis. If I'm Cal and I get him to understand he's going to be a role player again, that's fine. But if I'm DJ Wagner, I'm not thinking I'm going to be a role player. I want to go somewhere and be the guy. So I don't know where that is. If I was him and his family, I would have opened this thing up completely. I would have opened it up and, again, looked at a place like in Oklahoma, somebody that's missed on some dude, a Seton Hall, somebody like that who's missed on some guys who may not have as much money, right? May not have as much NIL, but you're playing the long game here. You're saying, like, I was once the number one player in the country, and I never believed he was the number one player in the country, but he's got a future in the NBA, hopefully. If he develops his perimeter game, if he can go right more effectively. Like there's some holes in his game that need to be addressed. And I actually thought he was better at actually moving the ball last year than I thought he'd be as a freshman. His assist numbers were pretty good. But again, I just don't know if going to Arkansas and playing in a backcourt with Nelly Davis is the right move for him.
No, I don't know if you're just throwing shit against the wall there or if you actually have info on DJ Wagner to Seton Hall. But like the more I think about it, I love that fit. You let him go he's from New Jersey. He's from Camden. You let him go play for Shaheen Holloway. You kind of get the, I think that you get a little bit of that dog infused into him after being in all of those Shaheen Holloway practices. Like, I don't hate it, man. I don't hate it at all. But yeah, we got about 30 seconds here. Give me one prediction, one crazy thing that's going to happen. We know crazy things happen in college basketball. What's going to be the one thing that we don't see coming here in the next week until the next time that we talk? Make your prediction. Put it on paper. You got 15 seconds.
Oh, I don't know.
You want my prediction? Here's my hottest thing. What's going to happen? Something that you said would happen, right, is going to actually prove to be correct. You're going to be right about something. This has been the Field of 68 After Dark. See you guys Tuesday.